announced the latest numbers at 7 p.m. on the East Coast. The number of cases worldwide moving past 65,000. Deaths nearing 1,500. And also, the 15th case in the United States has now been confirmed. That patient is part of a group quarantined at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. One district in Hubei province, where there are more than 500 confirmed cases, has started wartime population control measures. That means all buildings are closed. Everyone must stay in their homes. Neighborhood associations will buy food and medicine for the residents. And those measures are expected to last 2 weeks. Beyond the fight to beat the virus, another battle has broken out over how China is counting the sick. Meg Tirrell joins us tonight on that. Meg?
Well, hi, Contessa. Last night, of course, we saw that dramatic spike in the number of new cases reported from Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak. But it turns out this is because of a change in how they're diagnosing cases. Until last night, Hubei was reporting only cases confirmed with laboratory tests. The numbers were growing by between 1,600 and 3,000 a day. Now it's also reporting clinically diagnosed cases done using chest imaging to check for pneumonia. The WHO said today many of these cases go back days or weeks, even to the beginning of the outbreak. A backlog of cases health authorities had been unable to test yet. And while they say this change will allow clinicians to move faster to provide the right care, they do also warn these numbers may pick up cases of pneumonia caused by things other than the new coronavirus. And they say we shouldn't read too much into them. And let's get more on this now from former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gotlieb. Dr. Gotlieb, you were here helping us break down that huge surge last night. Now we've seen these new numbers tonight back down to 4,000 new cases. We don't yet have the breakdown as to how many of these were clinically diagnosed or confirmed with a test. But what do you make of such a smaller number than we saw last night?
Well, I think some of the thinking last night was that they were clearing out the backlog of suspected cases, and they were very suspicious and just sort of converting them to confirmed cases based on clinical findings that were consistent with the virus. The fact that the numbers went up again tonight suggests that's not the case, that they're just continuing to have growth in these numbers and that they just simply can't keep up with the PCR-based diagnostic test. Again, it's concerning because people who are being diagnosed based on CT findings, it suggests that they probably have significant findings on their chest x-rays. And flu season peaks a little earlier in China, so there's not as much background flu, and that's probably also influencing them. So people who are showing up with significant pneumonia, they're just surmising that's coronavirus.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that also because the WHO warning this could pick up other causes of these kinds of pneumonias in chest x-rays. You don't think it is too much flu, so it could be mostly novel coronavirus?
It's hard to know, and there's no reason to assume that their clinical diagnosis is less reliable than their PCR-based diagnostic test, because we know that's not as reliable as well. So there's no reason to believe that these numbers aren't true and won't continue to grow. And keep in mind, they put in place their measures, the quarantine measures, on January 23rd, and they're still seeing growth in cases, and that's concerning.
We know that there's a ramped-up procedure for screening people in China. Are we seeing the same thing now in the United States as we start to look at other communities that may have more influence from Chinese visitors who had been here for longer than 2 weeks?
Well, not yet. We're not looking for it yet here in the U.S. We're just screening people who have a direct connection either to people who have been diagnosed or traveled to China. They're just now starting to talk about implementing measures to do background screening of communities where there might be some spread to pick up undetected spread. And that's very important. That's the way we're going to prevent large outbreaks here in the U.S. is to find small outbreaks.
So there's reports that we may be using the flu surveillance network in 5 cities then to potentially test people for novel coronavirus. Is 5 cities enough? What else should the U.S. be doing right now?
Well, it depends on the 5 cities that we're picking. If there's cities where there's a lot of travel from China, then that could potentially pick up small outbreaks. I think the other thing we need to do is try to get an approved diagnostic test kit out to laboratories. Right now, we're relying on the tests that are being promulgated by the CDC. There were some problems with that. They had to pull it back, so that hasn't been fully implemented. But there's platforms in doctors' offices that can be adapted to test for coronavirus so we can do broader surveillance.
Are we being aggressive enough right now from what you can observe?
I think we're just starting to step up the measures. I think it's very important to broaden screening. Anyone who comes in with pneumonia that's not flu and isn't an obvious viral illness and isn't a bacterial cause probably should be screened for coronavirus. We don't have the capacity to do that right now, but we could build out that capacity fairly efficiently.